Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Larry Johnson, Larry of Sonar21.com. Bunch of stuff going on, Brics and other things. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Larry Johnson. Larry, welcome back for
Thanks, my friend.
another week. Okay, let's get going. What the heck happened to Sonar21.com? I don't know what the heck I'm doing half the time. At any rate, Larry's got a great website. I always like to point people to this because it's one of my favorite places to go for information. Whenever there's a new article, I would check it every day for new articles. Sonar21.com. And what Larry's talking about a lot is Brics, right? His first article, Trump's tariff policies empowering Brics, a look at India and China. And that is particularly important right now. And the reason it's particularly important is because there is a meeting. It's not necessarily Brics, it's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But in China, well, actually, there's the SCO meeting, and China is going to be celebrating the end of World War II and their contribution to World War II. But a number of the people from the Brics group is going to be there. And it seems to me that within the last day or two, Donald Trump has instituted a 50% tariff policy on India. Let's just say it doesn't seem in the best interest of the United States right now. But let's talk about the tariff policies in Brics. Larry.
Yeah, this if a country is in a dominant economic position where, basically other countries need us as opposed to we needing them, you can usually get away with imposing tariffs and it can work to your benefit. But in a world where there's alternatives, it's the difference between being the one guy on a desert island full of women. Hey, you're not going to have trouble getting a date, as opposed to being one of 1,000 guys on a desert island with one woman. Okay, there is a disparity in who controls the power in those situations. Well, the same applies to trade. So Trump and his team, which I can only characterize as moronic, decided that imposing these, and by the way, great shirt. I meant to put that out, styling today. They decided to pick on India and Brazil. Well, India actually had been one of all the Brics countries. India was probably the most pro-U.S. of those countries. India was planning to buy some F-35 jets from the United States. India was planning to hold meetings with Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary. India is a major supplier of pharmaceuticals to the United States. India, like China, is a producer for some other key electronics like Apple phones. So, and there is an, let's call it an entrepreneurial sector within the Indian populace that's really, hey, we got to maintain good relations with the United States. Well, congratulations, Donald Trump. You've blown all that up. That entrepreneurial sector now is outraged. They're furious at Trump. And India's, reacting pretty stiffly. Apparently now Trump has placed his fifth phone call trying to talk to Modi. Modi ain't talking. So anybody that's been in a bad relationship with a partner and, that they're not returning your phone calls, that's how Donald Trump's feeling today.
It's what the young people call ghosting him. He's ghosting Trump.
So India is saying, look, we're not going to be bullied. We're going to continue to buy oil from Russia because it's in our best interest to do so. And the likes of Pete. I listened to Peter Navarro, and it's one of those guys you just want to reach through the screen and choke him. But he was complaining. He was accusing India of facilitating the war in Ukraine. It's like, hey, look in the mirror, Peter. The United States is the biggest facilitator of wars in Ukraine, in Gaza, around the world, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. Take response. Stop, looking at some speck in other people's eyes when you got a big old large splinter in yours, as Jesus said. So India is saying, look, we're gonna tighten our relationships with China now, which they have. Oh, and those F-35s told the United States, forget about it. We don't need your planes. We'll find them elsewhere. And the same with there was another aircraft, series of aircraft they were going to purchase. They said no to that. So they're tightening up their relationship with China, which is pretty remarkable since China and India have been at odds and exchanged, blows on the border in the past. But now they're finding a way to, they're like humming the Beatles tune. We can work it out, So they're starting to work it out. Now, it's not just with India that the tariffs are starting to backfire. With China, boy, what a mess. Let's start with, did you see Trump's statement yesterday about, we want to welcome 600,000 Chinese students in. We can give them visas. Y'all come back. Why do you think he was doing that? I can explain. Chinese students to the United States pay full freight when they attend a college or university. No scholarships, no subsidies. They pay cold, hard cash, and the universities love that. Well, with Trump and his starting in February and this, anti-Semitic push and going after foreigners, the Chinese students' enrollment has dropped off the edge. And not just Chinese students, students from India, students from Nigeria, but China was the big kahuna in this. So, but there's another thing that's going on. Chinese companies who used to hire Chinese students who were educated in the United States, not hiring them anymore. They see them as a security risk.
Wow.
So the parents over in China are going, why should we send our kids to the United States where they're going to be abused, where they stay here and get a job? They're staying home. So this was done not as a gesture of goodwill to China. This was American colleges and universities going, oh my God, get those Chinese students back here or we're going broke. Well, I think they're going to be several are going to close, probably about 30 to 40 universities and colleges will close this year because of lack of enrollments, or at least close down important segments like STEM faculty. Then China also has stopped buying both propane and liquid natural gas. Well, last year they bought $4 billion worth of our propane. That's now zero. They said, no, we'll get it from Russia. We'll get it elsewhere. Iran. We're not buying from you, United States. The same with soybeans. So the soybean market has now completely collapsed in the United States as far as sales to China. They have to find someone else to buy. But the problem is China is now buying all of its soybeans from Brazil. And then the coffee beans. The coffee beans sanctioned. Well, normally to get a product approved to import into China, it takes months, sometimes a year or more. When this happened, China approved 180 exporters of coffee from Brazil in one day.
Wow.
So now on top, so not only the tariffs created a shortage, but there was also a poor harvest. So naturally, a shortage of beans is raising the price. So you're going to see some dramatic price increases in coffee in the United States in the next 6 to 8 months. So all of this taken together is showing that the tariffs are backfiring. They're not bringing in more cash, and people aren't lining up to kiss Trump's ass, as he claimed so loudly in February. Just the opposite. They're going, I'm not kissing your wrinkled old fat ass. We're going elsewhere. And they are. So, and so Brics, as you pointed out at the top of the show, Russia, China, India, Brazil, they'll all be together next week. I'm pretty sure South Africa is going to show up as well. If not for the Shanghai cooperation meeting, they're going to be there at a minimum for the celebration of the anniversary of the end of World War II.
A North Korean leader is going to be there also.
Yeah.
And my understanding is the North Koreans, number one, in North Korea, there's a lot of mineral wealth, all kinds of mineral wealth that just, needs to be developed. And what happens is you get the U.S. that looks at a North Korea, oh, they're the enemy, they're whatever, we don't want to do business with them. And Russia and China look at it and say, especially China's next door, man, there's whatever I need, nickel, gold, whatever I need to build these cell phones or whatever. I'm going to go over here and make some money. And the United States seems to me, if you think about it, China and India, that's like what is it? That is somewhere around 2.7 billion people, two countries.
Right.
That you've alienated, and the size of that market. I understand that in India, and I read this immediately after they announced the first sanctions, that there are a lot of farmers and different other people that are saying, let's just boycott American stuff. Let's not buy it. You got people boycotting us over what's going on in Gaza. They won't go to Starbucks, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. Now you're going to get to the point where the U.S. business is going to be kind of like a pariah business around the world. And we won't be able to get into other markets. They won't have to kick us out of the markets if the people just say, I'm angry at this country for, as I said, it may be Gaza, it may be tariffs, it may be whatever. We're just not going to buy their stuff.
Well, and to listen to Peter Navarro today, he was insulting. And the reaction of Indian commentators, I got to watch some of that live on RT. They're livid. They're just like, who are these people? How can they speak to us like this? So, and they say, well, you're not like us. There's an inherent racism in this that's coming out big time. So, Trump keeps lying to himself and lying to the American people about the effectiveness of his economic policy, when in fact what he's creating is a perfect storm for a financial crisis that I think will surpass 2008 and surpass the Great Depression of 1929.
Well, one of the things that's obvious is this. One of the biggest, and Americans don't think about this, one of the biggest markets, if not the biggest market for American products, is Europe. Europeans buy a lot of American products. And right now, the economies of Europe got one foot in the grave and the other on the patch of ice, as they say. Yeah. I mean, UK, France. Now, Germany's seems to be pretty much done. That Merritt's, I don't know, this guy's a complete lunatic. He's I call him the Stepan Bandera lookalike. If you look at a picture of Stepan Bandera, put it right next to Merritt's, I'm not sure they're not even the same person. Maybe they cloned Bandera, but they look alike. But the bottom line is you got France with his Macron with his partner beating the hell out of him every other day. And then Starmer wandering around. I don't know what's going on with that guy, but I'll just put it like this. Not to be personal, but I'm still suspicious that some seem to be male prostitutes were burning down his cars and all that kind of stuff.
Ukrainian male escorts.
Yeah, I'm just saying it just seems a little...
What a coincidence. What a coincidence.
Yeah, I think him and Macron have a lot in common. I'll just throw that out there. But my point being, their economies are done. And you can look at it and say, boy, they're in a world of trouble. But if they're buying American stuff all the time, you go to any of the European countries or European protectorates, you know what you see? A lot of little Fords, a lot of small American and the Japanese and South Korean vehicles and stuff like that. It's a huge market. If they go down, a lot of American companies are going to find out, oh, wait a minute, they stopped buying Mrs. Butterworth syrup and all of these things that we make here. And if Europe goes, we ain't going to be far behind.
Yeah. And that is, I wrote earlier in the week about not only is NATO losing it on the battlefield, NATO is losing out to Brics. So there are several of the major countries in Europe that have a debt to GDP ratio of 100% or more. And so to make that, for those not, I'm not going to give you a class on economics, but basically when your debt to GDP is 100% or more, that means if it's 100%, that you're spending every single dime that you bring in. You have nothing left over. You don't have anything to put away in savings.
They give him a personal loan.
Yeah.
A guy makes $100 grand a year and he spends 130. That's not sustainable.
Yeah. And in the United States right now, our debt to GDP ratio is 125, 126 to 100. And so every day that we're spending that money, we're piling up more and more debt. France, 110, 114. The UK, 100, 101. So they're right there. Germany is the only one that they're like at 79%, or 69%. And people say, well, that's not bad, except just 3 years ago, it was 50%. So they're going in the wrong direction fast because they're having to borrow money just to pay people's monthly pensions and health care, et cetera. So there's not none of the NATO members have an economic growth rate above 1.5%. In fact, the average for NATO is like 1.2, 1.3%. Whereas the Brics countries, their GDP annual for all of Brics is like 3.8, 3.9%. And none of the major Brics countries have a debt to GDP ratio above 100. They're all below. With Russia's got the lowest. They've got a 19% debt to GDP. So that means, they're spending 19%. They got a lot more they can put away in savings, can invest, can do other things with. As is the case with India, even with Iran. Iran, despite sanctions, despite being economically isolated for so many years, they're still in a fairly healthy situation in terms of their debt to GDP. So all of this is coming at a time where Europe's, claiming that it's going to be the big spender, but they don't have a job, they don't have any income coming in, and they've got a lot of debt. So how are they going to come up with the cash to pay for their kids' college tuition? They ain't. Only this time it's not college tuition, it's providing weapons for Ukraine. It's just not going to happen.
I also think there's going to be really social uprisings of some type in Europe. Germany, they're saying, here's the bottom line. The people in Germany are accustomed to certain things. They don't pay for college. They got health care. They got certain things that have been going. I think they've had health care paid for since like the 1871, if I'm not mistaken. So they got certain things that have been happening. They're used to this.
Yeah. Yep.
Merrick's is now saying all that has to go because we have to pay for weapons for Ukraine. The people are like, we don't want to do that. Oh, we've got to join the coalition of the willing to send. So the people are like, we don't want to do this. I recall Annalena Baerbock saying, we don't care what the voters want.
Right.
We're going to support Ukraine. It's not sustainable. That's why you see, look at the Democratic Party. Last time I saw, I was looking recently. There was a poll that said support for Israel in people 30 and under of Democrats is virtually zero. Virtually zero. It's below the margin of error. It's virtually zero, right? It's not sustainable to have a party when this huge element of your party says we don't like this, and you just say, screw this, we're going to do it anyway. It's not sustainable for a huge portion of your country to say we don't want this. I think the AFD is at 37%.
Mhm.
But they can never really come to power because the others will just always come together and put together over
Right.
50%. It's not sustainable. That country's going to blow up at some point socially, isn't it? Along with France and the UK.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and candidly, we're headed in that same direction here in the
Yeah.
United States as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Trump is alienating many in his MAGA base.
And
A growing number of people are increasingly fed up with being held hostage to Israel and being accused of anti-Semitism. I was struck yesterday with this irony of the great sadness, the public mourning for the deaths of 2 children who were shot up in Minneapolis. And yes, tragic, awful. But that's going on tenfold every single damn day in Gaza, and nobody gives a crap. So it's just, I look at I look at this as just gross hypocrisy. We only care about some kids. The murdering of children it's okay in some areas. It's just not okay here. That just outrages me.
well, you have the Democrats, who are already a pathetic party, but they got now with this Gaza thing, and the people are unhappy, and they're just go fall. Nobody's donating; they're just falling to pieces as well. They should. What a crap hole! But you got a lot of people in MAGA saying, "I didn't vote for more wars."
Yes.
And you're sending ships to Venezuela. Is that I don't think they're going to attack Venezuela. But my point is, another regime change war you're threatening over here. We didn't want wars anywhere. You told us you were going to stop wars, not start more. And then I know people who are not. People talk about MAGA. Trump won because he had a big coalition, not just MAGA. He had a lot of people that don't normally vote Republican. I know people that have never voted Republican in your life, don't even like the Republican Party, don't ideologically opposed, voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're so sick of the Democrats and this inflation. He told them he was going to address inflation. They wanted him to do what he said he was going to do.
Right.
And that's all. And you can win and get people that don't even agree with you or like you to vote for you because they're like, hey, I'm going to vote practical. I want something different. And they're pissed at it.
Yeah. Well, in fact, you had people like libertarians like Dave Smith, comedian, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And now they are, they've got some buyer's remorse going on. Candace Owens. Look at what she's saying.
Yeah.
And so, and on top of it, what's really sort of I find stomach turning is his narcissism has never been this bad. His me, I'm the greatest. Muhammad Ali used to do it sort of as a joke. He had fun with it. He made it. There was poetry and it was musical. Not with Trump, man. There's no poetry. There's no music. It's like blaring trumpet with cymbals that are making just noise. But then he surrounded himself with a group of Olympic-class sycophants. I don't know if you caught Steve Witkoff on Monday at that cabinet meeting where he declared that nobody in the history of the Nobel Peace Prize deserves the Nobel Peace Prize as much as Donald John Trump for what you've done for world peace. And you're going, what? And I mean, the guy was, I was surprised that the DC cops didn't come in and arrest him for performing a lewd act on the president, because my God, that's something. It was disgraceful, but and Trump just eats it up. The
thing about it is, and I'm a person that I believe America should take care of America's business.
Right.
And look what Vladimir Putin, he's looking out for Russia. Xi Jinping, they're looking out for China. What's Modi doing now? Hey, man, we're getting cheap energy. We can't afford. Okay. You're doing that. That's what they chose you to do. Handle your business. But yet you can't do this. You're supporting these people.
Right.
We're so worried about everybody else. And every day I turn on pictures. I see pictures of homeless camps all over creation, poverty on the rise. People are furious. Our political situation is really unstable. You might as well say politically, America is now unstable, right?
Right.
And we're not like America's unstable. What we got to figure out how to stabilize our country. We're like, we got to stop. You're not doing this. We're literally doing things that's going to hurt us. I think that within the next 6 months or so, we're going to see some dramatic. We buy a lot of stuff from India. We're going to see some dramatic increases in inflation.
Yeah.
Trump's been there 6 months. You can't keep doing this crap and not having. I think we had a lot of stuff that was stocked up. People are still buying stuff that was purchased prior inflation in preparation. At some point, I think we're going to turn a corner, and people are going to be, "What the hell kind of prices am I paying?"
Well, in fact, I don't think you have to wait 6 months. I think we'll start seeing it within the next 2 weeks. I think we're, going back into history, we're very likely to see a major financial crisis occur into September, 1st of October.
Wow.
And something that would be surpass what even happened in 2008. Yeah, because it's not just the United States. It's the United States, it's Europe. Japan's got some outrageous debt to GDP ratio as well. They've been financing everything. There's a point where, all of this hinges upon confidence in the system. And one of those, let's call it black swan events, is the West seems keen on provoking another fight with Iran. So just today, the three European states, France, Germany, UK, are talking about imposing new sanctions, snapback sanctions on Iran under the terms of the JCPOA. But what they ignore is the fact that they never provided the sanction relief that was promised in that agreement. So now they're just having not fulfilled their responsibility, they're turning around and then wanting to impose more punishment on Iran. And Iran's not saying, no, we're not having any of this. So they're fighting back. The Russians are standing with them. The Chinese are standing with them. And so, again, the United States with Europe is hell-bent on creating this enmity, pitting us against the global South. And bad news for us, the global South's bigger and richer. They got more natural resources. We're picking a fight with the wrong person. It's like I watched this viral video of this drunk guy at a golf course, and he picks a fight with the people behind him. The guy's not only bigger, but it turns out the guy was a retired NHL hockey player. Okay.
Oh,
I mean, the only thing worse than fighting him is fighting someone who's been in the octagon doing mixed martial arts. Okay. I mean, these hockey guys live to fight.
When I was in law enforcement, I remember one time they would notify us if like some VIPs were coming to a certain place, and they said these guys from down by South River, some guys from the Capitals were coming down there, and they were in some they had a couple of vans, and they were going to go to this place called Mike's Crab House, and so we took a couple of they sent some law enforcement officers just to make sure there was no trouble or people in. Okay, we go over there. Those guys, man, those are big guys, man. And I'm telling you something, their hands, and they carried the big things. Their wrists were like Popeye. I mean, their wrists were the size of you look and you're like, they don't look that big on ice.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, if that guy's going fast on skates and hit you, you're dead, man.
Yeah.
To be that, the hockey guys are not the guy you want to pick a fight with.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually what the United States is doing now. We think we're this big, tough fighter, but we keep picking fights with people that we can't beat. And in fact, they can hurt us. And the entire mentality, though, is that we're this sort of superior nation, and all these other nations need to get down on their knees and kiss our feet. But these other nations are going, hey, we're not your slave. You don't own us. We're independent, free people. You can ask us. You can, buy us dinner, bring us some candy and flowers. Romance us. But rape us? No, that's not happening. And that's been the U.S. mentality. It's been one of abusing and taking from other countries repeatedly, like what we're doing right now with Venezuela, threatening them like we're going to invade.
4,000 troops. I don't
Yeah.
Look. I don't believe you ain't invading any. You're not invading, Delaware with 4,000 troops, much less Venezuela. To me, that's some kind of a weird show, a threat. There's some foolishness going on, but there's no way you're going to invade Venezuela. Forget that. I wanted to ask you about this. One of the things I think that we're seeing when they had these meetings at Brics behind the scenes, I think this is something they've discussed. And you probably, it seems to me I noticed this. I think they've discussed, like, we're going to all cover each other for sanctions, because it seems like if the U.S. says we're not going to buy coffee from Venezuela, immediately China says we'll buy it. If China says we're not going to buy, from Brazil. If the U.S. does something and China says we're not going to buy soybeans from you, we'll buy them from Brazil. I think what we're seeing now is some kind of maybe informal agreement that they haven't put out in public that, okay, we're all together, maybe. And this is what I think about doing. Let's all look at what commodities and things that we all supply. Okay, so as soon as the United States comes after you and says you can't buy chocolate, I'll buy that chocolate. As soon as they says to you, you can't buy whatever, I'll buy that. And they've kind of like maybe having an informal agreement to say anything the United States does to hurt one of us, we'll rearrange the things that we buy to make sure that particular country doesn't suffer too much.
Right. And there's one other twist to it.
Okay.
When they're buying and selling, normally in the past, if Brazil says, okay, China, you want to buy my coffee? Well, China, you have to go to the open market. You need to buy up some dollars.
Right.
You deliver those dollars to me, and then I may convert those dollars into reales. Not now. It's a direct real to renminbi, RMB exchange. So no longer. So here's all these guys sitting, these people holding dollars on the sideline. Hey, anybody want to buy my dollars? Nobody's buying dollars. So the price of it. Okay, I'll give you a better deal. I'll give you more dollars for the same amount of money. So the dollar goes down in value. Now, in terms of servicing our debt, that's bad news. But a weaker currency is actually, from the standpoint of selling more makes your product more cheaper or more inexpensive, and potentially more attractive to buyers in a competitive market. But that varies sector to sector. So ultimately, this decreased demand for dollars is coming about because countries like India and Brazil are no longer going out onto the open market trying to buy dollars and create the demand. So that's the other twist here.
You got another interesting article. Once again, don't forget, Larry's got a great website, sonar21.com. He always has a lot of great articles. Besides losing the proxy war in Ukraine, which is getting pretty obvious, NATO also is losing the economic war with Brics. You mentioned NATO. I don't even know what the hell NATO is anymore. They don't have any military power to speak of.
Yeah.
All of them are in economic collapse. I mean, they got the word NATO, they got a NATO building and a flag and stuff like that. But behind NATO, there ain't much there anymore.
Yeah. The best thing about being at NATO headquarters in Belgium is the beer. Belgian beer is incredible. And it comes from all these monks who were, the weather's so crappy in Belgium that the monks stayed indoors and, they said, hey, what are we going to do? Hey, let's make beer, So they got really good at that. But apart from that, NATO has outlived its usefulness. It's outlived its purpose, its meaning. but NATO stands at the heart of this conflict with Russia. I was really shocked, as I shouldn't be, at Donald Trump's remarks yesterday or the day before with respect to commenting on Sergei Lavrov's interview with Kristen Welker of NBC. And, I guess she's NBC. But what Lavrov said was, look, we don't view summarizing, we don't view Volodymyr Zelensky as a legitimate president because his term is up, and instead of holding elections, he just stayed into power. However, we recognize that he is the de facto leader of Ukraine, and we'll talk to him in that capacity. But when it comes to signing any peace agreement, anything that's going to be binding on both countries, we want to make sure that we're dealing with somebody who's legitimate, has followed the Constitution, followed the law. And, that's what he said. And what did Trump say about that? He called it, Ray McGovern's expression, male bovine excrement. And they're just posturing. It's like, no, Donald, they're not posturing. They're telling you exactly what they think. And the fact that you are ignoring what they think, and then, it's going to guarantee you're not going to get any deal. Now, quickly look at it. As you scroll down, you'll see this is the debt to GDP ratio of all these countries. I mean, the little bitty ones that are part of NATO, they're meaningless. But you get Spain, you get France, you get the UK. It's not a pretty picture. And then I've got that same chart further down for the Brics countries. Those numbers are a whole lot better than compared to NATO. So what we've got is a situation where NATO thinks it's an economic giant. It thinks it's the big whale in Las Vegas casino, that it's got the big bags of money. And the fact is, they've overdrawn their bank account, and they're going in playing on borrowed money, whereas they're playing against the people that are genuinely wealthy, don't have debt, and are playing with their own money. They're not playing on debt. Who wins in those circumstances? Not the guy who's crashed his bank account. And then look there at the growth rate of these different BRICS countries. Far greater. The Russia's the outlier, 1.4%, but that was because they had a deliberate deflationary policy by raising interest rates in order to cut inflation. They've achieved that, and now they're cutting rates now to get the growth back up. That said, year over year, the wages in Russia are up 15%. So even though they've had a spate of inflation, they've had a spate of deflation or slowing economy, people, they're not suffering. They're not having to cut back. They're not having to go without a meal or two.
And they're growing. You got Indonesia, which is a huge country. I think they got hundreds of millions of people or something in Indonesia.
Yes.
So that's a gigantic country out there in the islands, and rather beautiful, I might add. And of course, UAE, we know what that is, but they're growing. So they're adding countries that are huge, that are growing with great potential.
Right.
As we look around, and half the countries in NATO are saying we might have to take an IMF loan out because we're broke.
Yeah. Both the UK and France are talking about getting an IMF loan. It's like, are you kidding me? So it is. And it'd be one thing if NATO was actually a powerful military organization, that they had factories that were producing all the artillery shells they needed, all the aircraft, all the tanks, all the armored vehicles. But that's not. It's the exact opposite. They're having to wait on production in the United States, and for certain systems like the Patriot air defense system, they're talking about upwards of 7 years before they can take delivery on that. Well, 7 years is a lifetime for some people.
7 hours is a lifetime for Ukrainian soldiers these days, because that's
Yeah,
about as long as they live. They're getting blown to smithereens.
yeah.
It appears to me that people talk about the longevity of this war. As we go into the fall, if the collapses, the economic collapses, which seem pretty apparent in Europe happens, France. Now, anytime there are claims made that your country is about to go broke and the people in charge don't even dispute it, they just keep quiet, you're in deep and serious trouble.
Yeah.
There's no way. And now supposedly they're buying stuff from us sending to Ukraine. If things go down in the next couple months as they appear to be, they ain't going to be able to buy. The people there are going to go bananas. These governments are going to fall. They got parliamentary systems. These governments are going to collapse.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think the Ukrainians opened the borders today so that 18 and 22-year-olds could escape? Did you hear that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Refugee crisis coming.
So, man, the 18 to 22-year-old guys are lined up at the border getting the hell out. Now, I interpret that as there's one more sign. They know the end is coming. And in fact, this is a move to try to save something of Ukraine rather than have them sacrificed and killed needlessly. So I think this is a preemptive move in Ukraine to prepare for the end. They know the end is coming.
And that's the other part of it. There's going to be a massive refugee crisis.
Yes.
And at the same time that these European countries are going broke, there's going to be a massive refugee crisis. And these people are going to be hungry and cold. And the citizens are going to be hungry and cold. Yeah. Everybody's going to be hungry and cold. And how will they deal with a refugee crisis? I mean, a massive refugee crisis. People will be out of there. And Europe will be basically a conflict zone, and a lot of them will be armed. They pumped Ukraine full of arms, so there'll be all kind of people, I won't use the word, but who subscribe to an ideology that was quite popular in the 1930s. I don't know, we'll just leave it at that. They'll be armed coming out in Europe. Is going to be a disaster. There ain't going to be no place to be this winter.
Yeah, and then you've got Poland under this new president, Nawrocki. Nawrocki is saying, hey, the Ukrainians owe us a big apology for being the perpetrators of the Volyn massacre back in 1943, for killing more than 100,000 Polish men, women, and children. And until such time as they apologize, we're going to have chilly relationships. So, they're coming down hard on that front too. So, at a time when you think what's needed most is NATO to tightly come together, coalesce, cooperate, open up their pocketbooks, get their factories rolling. Just the opposite is happening. They're fragmenting. They're arguing with each other. The EU is trying to sabotage the regime of Viktor Orban in Hungary. You basically gave Zelensky the green light to attack the oil pipeline that feeds Hungary and Slovakia. And the EU's attitude is, we don't care about them. We don't like their current governments anyway.
I think what Poland's doing also is very subtly preparing for a refugee crisis. They're going to close their borders. Yeah. Hey, we're mad with them. We've had it with these Ukrainians. They can't close the borders because they know a refugee crisis is coming. And that's the closest place. They will be pouring into Poland. And I think Poland's preparing to say, we're going to shut down we don't like the Ukrainians. We suddenly remembered that they used to try to kill us all. Shut down the border and say, you guys head towards Western Europe and Germany, stuff, maybe the Balkans, wherever. You can't go in Belarus. You can't go to, Russia's going to say, we let a bunch of you guys in here and you guys did terrible things to us. That border's closed and they're going to be flooding into Western Europe. I think things are happening to prepare for a refugee crisis in there. Let me ask you this. Witkoff comes out the other day and says, I think maybe the end of, I don't know if it was Witkoff, somebody, it may be the end of the year before we're going to get a deal. with the way the Trump administration seems to be not realistically accepting what Russia's saying,
Yes.
not able to. I think part of it is I think they're not able to because of the pressure from internally.
Right.
There is no, I don't know what they're even talking about. There's no hope of a deal with Russia if you won't acknowledge Russia's legitimate security concerns.
Well, exactly right. And the deal that Witkoff is talking about that was outlined, I believe, in the Financial Times is just a non-starter. They're talking about a demilitarized zone a la Korea, that the Ukrainians can stay armed on their side of the zone and in position, and that NATO troops will be in Western Ukraine. Russia goes, that's why we're fighting this damn war. We don't want Western troops, NATO troops, in any part of Ukraine. And we want Ukraine to be demilitarized. They're no longer going to threaten us. So if that's the deal that Trump's pushing, he's not going to have a deal. And then he can be mad, he can be angry, he can threaten Russia, but Russia's not going to commit suicide. And that's what the Trump administration seems to inclined. Witkoff thinks that he can convince the Russians to kill themselves.
Well, I think I'll say this. People like you and Tucker Carlson are what forced mainstream media to interview the whatever it was, the president of Iran or Sergei Lavrov or whatever, right? Because when they saw that alternative media personalities were willing to go in there, they felt forced into a corner.
Right.
When I watched that disrespectful, stupid woman,
Kirsten Walker,
just disrespect. This guy is a foreign minister.
Yeah.
I don't care if you like any country, whatever country, name the country. If they came on my channel, I would ask them questions and shut up. She's like, it's a yes or no question. Did you invade? And I'm like, he's a foreign minister of Russia. I want to hear him. I don't want to hear you. And I just think that in watching that, it reminded me one more reason why I hate mainstream media. When you guys talk to Sergei Lavrov, you ask him a question and you shut up and you let him say what he had to say.
Right.
It wasn't adversarial. It was professional. These are the ones, we're not supposed to be trained journalists, but they're unprofessional.
Well, and it's also when it's okay to ask questions to clarify a point or so. What do you mean by that? Or are you saying that Ukraine really did submit this as that was their draft document that you agreed on? Because that's one of the things that he said to us. And, the answer to that is yes. This, I maintain that there will never be a negotiated peace settlement with Russia as long as this propaganda campaign in the West continues. And the propaganda campaign portrays Russia as an enemy, as a predator, Putin as an authoritarian dictator, Russia as an imperialist bent on conquering the world. Now, none of that is true, but that's what people believe. So no matter what Donald Trump believes, the fact that many in his government and many in his base, as well as many Democrats, believe the very, very worst about Russia and Putin, then there's no basis for a deal. Well, what's the negotiation? Because Russia is not going to commit suicide. They've done that. They've been down that road.
Let me ask you this. I know you have a lot of history in investigating issues. What's his name? The Walrus. They raided his home the other day.
Oh, John Bolton.
Right? Yeah.
That was by the way, that was my neighborhood. I literally lived around the corner from Bolton there.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I had one day he's out shoveling snow. I should have taken my chance and had lost control of the vehicle, but
most of the time he's shoveling crap. He's shoveling something that it ain't snow.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so they went around there and they did this. Man, I think because I always felt like this, all they got to do is look. That whole Russiagate thing, they're all filthy. If they start looking into Bolton and Comey and these guys, if they're allowed to, I don't know if they'd be allowed to, they're all the Adam Schiff, all of the leaking, all the stuff they did. There's a lot of questions. It ain't going to take Sherlock Holmes to figure this one out.
Yeah, even Helen Keller could see and hear these clues. Okay, this started at the behest of the Clinton campaign in the summer of 2015, with the CIA and the FBI starting to cooperate with Hillary's team. They're setting in place a system to sabotage whoever was the nominee, because they didn't know in the summer of 2015 if it was going to be Donald Trump. But they were identifying targets. They were collecting names. They were collecting intelligence, courtesy of the British through GCHQ.
Yes.
And then by December, the strategy to pin Trump as a stooge of Putin had come into full bloom. John Podesta was emailing back and forth with a Democratic operative named Brent Badowski to that effect. And then once Cruz dropped out of the race on May 4th, bingo. That's when the whole let's get Trump and make him as Putin stooge campaign took off. So you're right. There is ample evidence to put these people in jail. Now, will they do it? I've heard a lot of good talk, and I've seen a lot of little action.
I'm sure you're like me. As soon as they started it, I said it doesn't make sense. And as soon as it started, I sniffed it out of it. To me, it wasn't hard. As soon as I saw that, they literally, when you look at the Steele doctor, the Steele garbage crap that they wrote,
the
dossier, and it says the Russians use the Miami consulate to transfer money, and it's like, well, there is no Russian consulate in Miami. Right. At that point, the rest of it is crap. At that point, as soon as you see that, you say, well, this is a bunch of garbage. And when you look at it, none of it makes sense. And then we find out, a lot of Americans don't know this. We find out that, in fact, the FBI did do an in-depth investigation of the Steele dossier. And they found out that it came basically from two places, from a guy who was an alcoholic, who worked for the Brookings Institute with Fiona Hill, under Fiona Hill. And he got information from a guy, Chuck something or other, that had led the Clinton campaign in Virginia.
Yeah.
So the investigations do this. They look into the Steele dossier, the FBI, and they find out it literally came from the Clinton campaign, and they still pretend as though it's valid.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was an organized coup, and and it does, just to acknowledge that doesn't mean that we therefore say, oh, that everything that Donald Trump's doing is great either. He's got his own problems, but my mom always said, and my dad, two wrongs don't make a right.
It's the principle of justice. It's it's principles. When I always say this, when I was with the ACLU, back when the ACLU was decent, back now it's nothing like that. But when I was with the ACLU, then I was on the board. I'll never forget. A bunch of people got mad at me because the KKK requested a permit to have a march or something in Annapolis, and Annapolis said no, and we sued.
Yeah.
And they said, why? The KKK, forget it. The First Amendment says they cannot restrict, government can't restrict giving you anything based on your views.
Yeah.
It's a legal organization. And if you do that, what happens when the NAACP comes and says, well, we want to march, and somebody says, I don't like them? When some other of the National Association for anything, Native Americans, anything, some other group, whatever. Now, if some group for Palestine, the Palestinians, they do the same thing. What we said was, this is about a principle. You're familiar with the whole Skokie thing. It's about principles. It doesn't have to do with views, organizations, who you like, who you don't like. My thing was, I was the Bernie guy at the time, who the Democrats screwed over the same way.
Yeah.
But it was just about, look, I don't care what you say about Trump or not. The bottom line is, this is a bunch of crap, and I'm never going to support lies. And if a person is accused of a quadruple murder, he's accused. He gets certain things that are guaranteed by him. Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, First Amendment. I don't don't care what you're accused of. And I don't care if you did it or not. They have to go by the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. I'm with you all the way, brother.
You know, and now I just wonder, the thing I think the problem is here, Larry, and you know, oh, we got to go. It's 3:55, and I know you got to go.
Yeah, I said, we just started talking, man. 54 minutes going flying by.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Lucky I looked at the clock. I was just ready to get into something else. But thanks a lot, Larry. Everybody, Larry, you can go ahead and drop
All right, brother.
People, Sonar 21, it will be out. Have a great day. All right, everybody. That was the one and only Larry Johnson. We were having a blast. But what we were talking about, you know, wait a minute. Share screen. There we go. Yes, what we were talking about was something quite simple, and that is we were talking about the importance of having principles. And principles mean this. This is the way there's Larry once again. Okay, there you go. Sonar 21. That's Larry's website. Everybody make sure you check it out. And here's what I say about principles to me. And yeah, that's what I like about alternative media, really. That's what I like about the people that I deal with in alternative media. For the most part, you deal with principles. Two things I'll say as I'm on my way out. I remember an article that I read back in like 2015 or 16 of all places in the Washington Post. And then that article, what they said was they did this survey and test and all that. And what they would do is they would say to people, you know, they would give people policies or whatever. And what they found was that if a person was a Democrat and they thought the policies came from the Democrat, they would be much more likely to support it than if they came from a Republican and vice versa, right? And so what you found, and I used to get people, right? Way back, I'd say, oh, yes, did you hear Barack Obama said X? And they would say, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. And I'd say, oh, my bad. That was a quote from Reagan. Or I'd say, hey, listen to this quote from Reagan. Oh, that was great. Oh, my bad. Sorry, that was Obama. And what I realized was once I said the quote, where they thought it came from determined whether they liked it about. They didn't evaluate the quote. They just evaluated who said that. Obama, I hate it. Or whatever. If you're an Obama fan, Obama, I love it. Reagan, I hate it. It wasn't that they loved it or hated it. It's they associated the quote with somebody they didn't like, which means they weren't really even concerned with the quote. And this is the way I put it. Are you a who person or a what person? I'm a what person. When I hear something, I'm going to evaluate the information based on my values. It may have came from somebody that I love, that I adore. It may have came from somebody that I think is the most wonderful person. I'm a big Lincoln fan. It may have came from Abraham Lincoln or FDR, guys that I really like, right? Or it might have come from somebody I really don't like. I don't know. Think of somebody, right? But I'm going to evaluate it and say, that's right. That's a good idea. Based on what it is, not who it came from. That's, I think, the beauty of alternative media, that there's so many people who say, somebody said Red Sox fan, right? I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm a Giants fan. I'm a Patriots fan. And then they'll, oh yeah, whoever the team they hate, yeah, their fans are a bunch of idiots. The fans of our country, of our team, are the good guys, which is fine and all for if you're a football or a baseball fan or something. That's all good and fine. But when it comes to politics, you know, you go around the world. Who I like Hugo Chavez. I like Chavez. One of my favorite quote things was when he went to the UN and he spoke after Bush and he was like, "I smell sulfur. The devil was here." I thought that was a great quote. It was wonderful. I was a big Chavez. I like someone that you probably would hate and vice versa. But Reagan, not a fan of Reagan for any number of reasons. But Reagan worked with the Russians to do nuclear treaties. That was outstanding. I'm glad he did that. I wish we had presidents today that would do that kind of stuff. I mean, I like them for a lot of other economic reasons. I despised them. He started us on this downward spiral of debts and all this kind of stuff, right? Somebody says 49ers. I like the 49ers. Actually, my son-in-law is a big 49ers fan. And I used to really, I was big, Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and all those guys. So I'm I like the 49ers. That's what I like. I'm a Commanders fan. Of course, I'm near DC, but I like the Steelers. I like Frisco. You know, I like some of the traditional teams. Frisco and the Steelers. That's real football there. How about that? But at any rate, that being said, thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. Somebody says, I'll trade for Maduro or Putin. The clowns that we have, you know, you can't do a whole lot worse. Although Macron, no, but all jokes aside, right now, I don't know what the hell's going on in the West with these jokers that we got. I could pull a homeless person off the street and do better than we're doing right now. But thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. As I've always said, as I say all the time, if you can afford it. I thank my Patreon members and my Buy Me a Coffee members. There are people that do monthlies, but those, some people Buy Me a Coffee, you can do a one-time donation if you choose, or you can become a monthly member and Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate all that. That's what keeps the channel going. Follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble, follow me on Telegram. Certainly, we got PayPal and that kind of stuff. It's all at the bottom. And of course, guess what else I have? I have a P.O. box, and you'll see it at the bottom. P.O. Box 32. People email me all kinds of great things, ties. People email me ties and shirts, all kind of wonderful stuff. People email me books, magazines, letters that they've written themselves, donations, you name it. So thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it. Somebody says, do you still do radio? Yes, in fact, I do. I'm on WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. You can go to WPFWFM.org every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. So thank you very much, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. Thank you very much. I'm out.